I want to get some comment on Justin Welby. This is a huge high-profile resignation within the church, of course. He's resigned after failing to act on child abuse allegations. A report found that Welby did not inform authorities about John Smyth. The Church of England, known now as the Church of England's most prolific abuser. Over 130 victims. There's been a petition to remove, or certainly encourage, Mr Welby to resign. In a statement, he said he accepted responsibility for the harm caused and admitted the church's failures in protecting survivors and seeking justice. Let's speak with the Reverend Peter Ould, Church of England priest and commentator. Reverend, good afternoon to you. Your response, if you would, to this resignation.
Good afternoon, Ian. Well, it's a sad day, isn't it, for Justin and his family? But in some sense, it's a relief, and actually, it's quite a profound moment, I think, for the Church of England, that finally a senior leader is taking on corporate responsibility for the church's failings. And it's really clear, Justin admits it, in regard to this specific abuse by John Smyth, but in general, we have failed. We have failed, and it's the end of lessons learned now, I think, in terms of, senior leaders just saying, oh, we'll learn the lessons. People are actually taking responsibility for being at the top of an organisation that has let this kind of stuff happen.
I mean, this is 11 years since we know that this was out there, this information, and, in some areas before that as well. I suppose what is confusing, Peter, just to people outside the church, people like myself, our listeners and viewers, and I'm sure people within the church as well, it's not as if we haven't seen establishment abuse, whether it's in the church or elsewhere, but we've certainly seen it within the church. We know about the Catholic Church. We know that that the Church of England has not been immune from it either. These narratives, these kind of stories were out there way before this. How could we in the modern era have missed it? And how could those that knew about it have failed to act?
Well, I think one of the dynamics that was going on with Justin Welby's resignation was and I saw, as it were, from the pews, was a groundswell of discontent from clergy across the theological spectrum, across the churchmanship spectrum, who were basically saying, we get safeguarding rammed down our throats by the church hierarchy, and we're threatened with discipline if we, don't report things or don't do our best. And the Makin report, I think, was the first time it was very clear that a very senior leader hadn't done absolutely everything that they could have done. It's clear that senior church leaders didn't follow up in South Africa, didn't press the police to do something about it, and there are questions there, aren't there?
How could they not, do you think, though, Peter? How you're in possession of this information about a serial abuser over many years, the most horrendous physical, sexual abuse. How would anybody at a senior level, Mr Welby and others as well, that have seen these reports, and your first thing would have been, right, we've got to go to the police over this?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think and if you read the Makin report, he and other senior leaders did actually go to the police, and the police said, it's in South Africa, not sure what we can do. But I think what's clear is more sort of underlying this is this sense of actually Justin Welby taking this corporate accountability. He lost the trust, the confidence, the support of the clergy in the pews. You couldn't find a single bishop in the last 48 hours who was prepared to come on a show like this and support him in any way. It's clear there was no confidence that he was the right person to move us forward on this subject.
Do you think, is it possible, and I don't mean to sound smart over this, was there a sort of an ecclesiastical dimension to his decision a bit prior to this? Do you think he sort of thought, well, this is an internal matter, forgiveness is part of what we do, we can deal with it? And often that accusation, even if that was done, saying it out loud now sounds breathtakingly naive and incredibly inept, bearing in mind what we're dealing with. But, of course, institutions, whether we're talking about the church or the post office, seem to have a PhD in this kind of groupthink thing of defending the system against anything else.
I think you raise a really important question around, the core Christian message, which is essentially that Jesus takes us from the depths of our depravity and raises us to the heights of his holiness, right? So yes, there is absolutely a story for grace and forgiveness and restitution. But in order to have resurrection, you have to have death first. And I think Justin Welby has recognised that. He's recognised that he's a kind of icon almost of the church's institutional failure, so that he needs to, as it were, metaphorically die at this point in order to let God raise something else up. Right? And he may not be the last person here who takes responsibility for this and for their failures.
This man, Smyth, could have been brought to justice. He died in 2018. There was just time. Yeah. Will Mr. Welby's CV now be more recognised, not for his work within the church across this country and the wider world? Will it now be recognised as a man that could have brought a serial sex offender to justice but failed to do so, essentially protecting a paedophile?
I think there's a lot in Justin Welby's career in the church to celebrate. Right, he's done a lot of good. He's prepared to go out into the deepest, darkest, dangerous places, right, and proclaim Jesus there. And I think there's a lot to do. He's tried to do his best for the Church of England, for the Anglican Communion as a whole. So I wouldn't want everything that he's ever done, his work as part of the Coventry Cathedral community and sort of all that sort of peace and justice work. I don't want that to be forgotten. But I think, at the same time, I think it's a real that his career in the church has come to an end at this point through this, that he's fallen on the corporate sword. It is going to tar him. I think actually now what we need to do is to leave him and his wife and his family in peace. Give them some space, let him work out what his future looks like. And also, pray for us as a Church of England, because we are going to have to now work out where we move forward on safeguarding, calls for an independent safeguarding body, aspects like that. There is still a lot of work for us to do corporately as a body.
Peter, thank you. Reverend Peter Ould, Church of England priest and commentator.